Sugar, I pick you to be the captain of my chosen family tree. I pick you to throw the party when I leave this world. So writes Andrea Gibson in her book, You Better Be Lightning. Because even those of us who are blessed with a loving, supportive, wonderful family go out into the world and pick chosen family. Gibson is a poet who has these great one-liners about love, life, and relationships. For example, she writes, "You can die of a broken heart, but the opposite is also true. And everything other than I love you is small talk." My best friend from rabbinical school, Lori, died this past year. Just about every word she said was her own version of I love you. Throughout the year, rivers of grief flowed one right into the other. She and I were together on our very last visit on October 7th. I got the phone call that she had died while I was on my way to Israel in November. I could not believe when I got there to a country drowning in grief that my friends had room in their hearts to comfort me. That's chosen family. You would have loved Lori, and she would have loved you. If she had not been sick, she would have been out here a few times a year to cheer me on and you. She was a holy ball of energy and joy. She was shorter than I am and packed more light and love into that little body than fits into some small countries. She loved music and sang from deep in her heart. She was a wildly creative educator who drew people into Judaism with her magnetism that was loving, funny, strong, and gentle all at once. Her greatest impact on me, though, was that she taught me how to do friendship, how to do chosen family. She lived by this. Show up for each other and never keep score. If you were the one who called last, call again. Show up for each other and never keep score. That's how to build a chosen family. That's how we survive. In this age of loneliness, it may be the only way that we survive. Since the pandemic, studies and full-length books have been written about the importance of forging and maintaining friendships. Their impact on our physical and psychological health is well documented. So too is the challenge of making new friends in adulthood. The New York Times, for example, is chock full of low-pressure ways to do so. Schedule an 8-minute call. Text a photo to an old friend from a time when you were together. Become a regular by showing up somewhere consistently. And here's a secret that you can't tell anyone I told you. The reason to show up to Kabbalat Shabbat and all the other things we do here is not that your rabbis are brilliant, though your rabbis are brilliant. The reason to show up is that after a few times, you start recognizing people, and they, you. And pretty soon, you've got a chosen family. Right now is the time in the Jewish year to pay attention to our families of origin and our chosen families. If there are words left unsaid, this is the time to say them. And then Sukkot starts next week. After all these hours indoors reflecting and doing this difficult work, it will be time to sit outside, invite friends over, and enjoy long and lovely meals. And if you simply can't imagine squeezing that into your life, invest in your friendships anyway. Try one of those low-pressure tips. Take a minute to text 5 words, "I am thinking of you," and see what happens. Like everything else that matters, friendships take time and effort, and they're worth it. The idea of chosen family has been around for a long time. The Mishnah teaches that in order to acquire Torah, that is, in order to become wise, one needs to engage with friends. The Talmud teaches that when we reunite with a friend we haven't seen in 30 days, we should say Shehechianu, thanking God for bringing us to that moment. And if it's been 12 months, we should bless God who is Michayeh HaMetim, the one who revives the dead. Because during that 12 months, it felt as if the person did not exist. And it's as if they're now coming back to life. Or maybe some part of us is coming back to life when we see them again. Jews, as you know, we can pray on our own, but our prayers are incomplete without a minyan, without companions who help lift the prayers up to the heavens. TIOH is a chosen family, and in the best way possible, that means we're stuck with each other. That's the reason why it's so important to me that we learn how to talk to one another and listen, even when it's really hard. This past year posed too many challenges, one of which is, what does it mean to be in relationship? How much disagreement can any of us tolerate? If you are voting in a way that I believe hurts me, does it diminish my integrity to remain your friend? If you champion an opinion, a candidate, or an analysis of events that I cannot bear, is there any hope for us? I have to believe that if we shift the conversation so that we're telling our stories and discussing our values, there is hope for us. Telling our stories lets people into our lives. It generates empathy and perspective. And values are complex because when we're pushed into a corner, we often hold on to just one as if for dear life. But really, there are so many values that influence us as we make decisions and act in the world. I think that we, as each other's chosen family, can handle the depth and nuance of truly encountering one another, and will be better for it. Our need for each other, after all, is like an animal instinct. It is an animal instinct. Did you know that not only chimpanzees, but also giraffes, elephants, whales, and other mammals express reassurance and affection through touch? They nuzzle up against one another. They grieve when an animal close to them dies, sometimes clinging to its corpse for days, as if we know this feeling, as if not wanting to let go. When geese fly in that iconic V formation, if one of them gets sick or wounded, one or two others fall out and stay with the injured one until it's ready to return. And then they work together to catch back up to the group. This is how we survive. There are many models for how we deepen our relationships and choose our family. The Dalai Lama said, "I try to treat everybody I meet like an old friend." In some Native American communities, it is customary to create new family relationships through mutual consent. That is, you can formally ask someone to join your family. I learned of this tradition from a congregant who recently described to me a brother and a sister he had gained that way. "Since I never had a brother," he wrote, "this request that we made of each other filled a gap for me." He also wrote, "Years after my sister passed away and my mourning had largely passed, a woman, through mutual agreement, became my sister. It was not to replace my sister. Rather, I found qualities in this new sister which filled gaps in my family constellation." Chosen family is no joke. The people we add to our lives fill very real and very deep needs. The great scholar Maimonides identified 3 levels of friendship. In the first, both parties derive benefit from the relationship. It's what we would call acquaintances. The second level of friendship is based on either enjoyment or trust. These are the folks you play pickleball with, or those in whose homes you'd be comfortable leaving your kids for a few hours. They're what columnist Lisa Miller calls medium friends. And finally, the third is a relationship with a higher purpose. There are friends who are united in their commitment to each other's growth, friends who take pleasure in supporting the other's pursuit of a better and holier life. We need all three types. They're important in different ways. And I was so lucky to have Lori as the third. I'll conclude with two stories about how she made me better, just by doing it, just by being who she was. First, Lori was deeply generous. In the summer of 2012, we were studying at the Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. I was newly pregnant, and something was wrong. I told Lori I was going to see a doctor, and she insisted on coming with me. It cracks me up to remember how she used to tell the story. It was a classical Israeli experience, crowds, languages, long lines that nobody waited in. We were finally called back to see an OB-GYN who was at least 150 years old. While he was taking my history, I didn't understand the Hebrew word for in vitro fertilization, so naturally he just kept shouting it louder and louder until I nodded my head in agreement. The ultrasound showed, thankfully, that everything was fine. And then I heard a heartbeat for the first time. Stunned into silence and awe, I heard Lori, who was standing right behind me, weeping quietly. We never spoke about it, but I knew that she was weeping for two reasons. One, because if there was one thing she wanted in my first several decades of knowing her, it was a baby. And two, because despite her own crushing disappointment in not having one, she was so happy for me. She celebrated every moment of my children's lives with every fiber of her being. The fact that I had something she desperately wanted but could not have never once diminished her joy or her love. Be generous in joy. Be generous in love. And finally, Lori reminded me to live while we're alive. That is the flashing red light message of these days of awe. On that last visit, just over a year ago, Lori had invited me to meet her in Miami. She was incredibly weak physically. She got there first and called to tell me to get the key from the front desk and meet her in our room. When I arrived, she was in bed, unable to move a muscle. I don't think she opened her eyes when I came in. I laid down right next to her and held her hand. We caught up for a few minutes, and then she said, just like this, "Mari, I want to go kayaking tomorrow." And I said, okay. And believe it or not, we did. I paddled from the back, and she sat in front, feeling every rise and fall as the water rocked our kayak, taking in the beauty of the ocean and the beauty of this world. And again, she wept, soft, beautiful tears, aware of death and filled with life. So, sugar, as we enter this new year, as we pray to be sealed in the book of life, knowing that it's not up to us, sugar, will you throw the party whenever it is that I leave this world? Will you join my chosen family tree? Will you stay in it with me, even as we disagree? That's how we're going to survive and thrive. Shana Tova.